I wish I could shut up, like a telescope, meaning I wish I could fold up or shrink up in order to be much smaller.
Hello and welcome to English with Justino, a podcast designed for you to learn English vocabulary, expressions, culture, and maybe even some grammar along the way. This podcast is for those already speaking a little English at an intermediate level. The idea here is to listen and learn from a native English speaker in a natural way, the way you first learned your native language, by hearing it. Okay, forward we go. Enjoy!
Episode 19. Una llave especial para el jardín. Good morning, good afternoon, or good evening, depending on when and where you are listening. This story is the third of a grand adventure that I hope you continue to follow along with. I'm planning to tell the story and then ask questions along the way in order to emphasize what is happening and to give you some new vocabulary words. Try to answer the questions while you're listening. This story may sound familiar, and I hope it is. There's a lot more to come. I suggest you listen to this and other podcasts many times if you want to improve your English. Keep practicing and try to answer the questions naturally. Don't forget to stay until the end to listen to the summary with all different points of view. These are there for you to improve your listening skills, and, as always, please visit www.oyejustino.com to find a transcription for this podcast and vocabulary cards with many common words found here. Listening to and following along with the transcripts is a good way to learn a new language. Please send me an email to let me know what you think. I would love to hear from you. Before we start, here's a summary from the last and second story to remind you where we left off. Alice was falling down, down, down without stopping for quite some time. Alice said out loud that she was getting somewhere near the center of the earth. She was also wondering, when she did land, what country she was in. Alice kept falling, and soon she started talking out loud to herself about her cat Dinah. Alice asked out loud if anyone was feeding her cat back at home. Then she asked out loud if her cat was here, and if there was any mice to catch. She supposed maybe not, but there were bats to catch. She didn't know if Dinah ate bats. Just then, she fell into a heap of sticks and dry leaves. She looked up and thought how strange this all was. Alice was back on the ground, somewhere in a heap of sticks and dry leaves. And now, the rest of the story continued. Alice was on the ground, but not a bit hurt. She jumped up to her feet, and she looked up, but it was all dark overhead. Before her, or in front of her, was another long passage, and the white rabbit was still in sight, hurrying down it. There was not a moment to be lost. Away went Alice like the wind, and she was just in time to hear it say, as it turned a corner, "Oh, my ears, and my whiskers! How late it's getting!" She was close behind it when she turned the corner, but the rabbit was no longer to be seen. She found herself in a long, low hall, which was lit up by rows of lamps hanging from the roof. Was Alice badly hurt by landing after her fall? No, Alice was not a bit hurt, and she jumped up to her feet and looked up. When Alice looked up, did she see a bright light? No, Alice did not see a bright light. Alice looked up and it was dark overhead. What was in front of or before Alice after she stood up? Was a lion waiting for her? No, there was not a lion waiting for Alice. In front of or before Alice was a long passage, and the white rabbit was still in sight, hurrying or rushing down the passage. Did Alice decide to ignore or forget the rabbit? No, Alice did not want to lose any time, and she rushed away like the wind to catch the rabbit. Did Alice hear the rabbit? Yes, Alice heard the rabbit, and the rabbit was concerned, worried, that it was getting late. Was Alice close behind the rabbit when she turned the corner? Yes, Alice was close behind the rabbit when she turned the corner, but the rabbit was no longer to be seen. Or, in other words, Alice lost the rabbit, and he was no longer to be seen. Where was Alice now? Alice found herself in a long, low hall. Was it a dark hall? No, it was lit by a row of lamps hanging from the roof. There were doors all around the hall, but they were all locked, and when Alice had been all the way down one side and up the other, trying every door, she walked sadly down the middle, wondering how she was ever going to get out again. Were there windows made of glass all around the hall Alice was in? No. Alice was in a hall, and there were doors all around the hall. Were all the doors wide open? No. The doors all around the hall were all closed and they were locked. Did Alice go up one side and then down the other, checking all the doors? Yes. Alice had been all the way down one side and then the other, trying every door, and they were all locked. Did Alice jump up and down happily after trying all the doors? No. Alice walked sadly down the middle of the hall, wondering how she was going to get out since all the doors were locked. Suddenly, she came upon a little three-legged table, all made of solid glass. There was nothing on it except a tiny golden key, and Alice's first thought was that it might belong to one of the doors of the hall. But, alas, either the locks were too large or the key was too small, but at any rate it would not open any of them. However, on the second time around, she came upon a low curtain she hadn't noticed before, and behind it was a little door about 15 inches high. She tried the little golden key in the lock, and to her great delight it fit. Did Alice slowly come upon a chair with 4 legs? No. Alice arrived to find a small or little table with only 3 legs. Was the table made of wood, and did it have a cup of coffee on it? No, the table was made of glass, and the glass table had a tiny golden key on it. Did the key work in any one of the locked doors? No, the key was too small and the locks too large, and the key would not open any of the doors. However, on the second time around, Alice did find something. What did Alice find? Alice found a low curtain that she had not noticed before. Was there a wizard with a wand behind the curtain? No. What was behind the curtain then? Behind the curtain was a little door that was about 15 inches high. Did Alice try the tiny golden key in the small door? Yes, Alice tried the small golden key in the small 15-inch door, and the key fit the lock perfectly. Alice opened the door and found that it led into a small passage, not much larger than a rat hole. She knelt down and looked along the passage into the loveliest garden you have ever seen. How she longed to get out of the dark hall and wander about those beds of bright flowers and those cool fountains, but she could not get her head even through the doorway, and even if my head would go through, thought poor Alice, it would be of very little use without my shoulders. Oh, how I wish I could shut up like a telescope. I think I could, if I only knew how to begin. For, you see, so many out-of-the-way things had happened lately that Alice began to think that very few things indeed were really impossible. Did Alice open the door and see that it led into a large cave? Well, yes, Alice opened the door, but it did not lead into a large cave. Rather, it led into a small passage, not much bigger than a rat hole. Did Alice then close the door? No, Alice looked through the door and saw that the passage led to one of the loveliest or prettiest gardens you have ever seen. Did Alice want to get out of the dark hall that she was in? Yes, of course. Alice wanted more than anything to get out and wander among the garden and the beds of bright flowers and cool fountains. Did Alice walk through the door into the garden? No, the door and the passage were too small, and Alice could not even fit her head through the doorway. However, Alice was thinking about things very differently now. Did Alice give up and go back the way she came? No, Alice said, "I wish I could shut up like a telescope." This is a strange way of saying that she wished she could shrink up small enough to fit through the door. And the way things were going with Alice's day, shrinking to fit through a tiny door may not be impossible. And that's the end of this part of the story. Let's listen to the summaries in the past, present, and future. Listen close for the differences. Are you ready? The present tense. Alice lands and is on the ground after her long fall, but is not a bit hurt. She jumps up and sees the white rabbit is still in sight and is hurrying down a long corridor. Alice runs after the rabbit, but it is too late. She is standing in a long, low hall lit by lamps on the roof. There are doors all along the walls in the hall, but they are all locked. Alice doesn't know how to get out, but she finds a key sitting on the three-legged table. She tries it in all the doors, but it didn't fit any of them. Alice walks and checks the hall one more time and unexpectedly finds another small door behind a curtain at the end of the hall. The key works in it perfectly. Alice opens the door and finds that it leads into a small passage and into the most beautiful garden she has ever seen. The past tense. Alice landed and was on the ground after her long fall, but she was not a bit hurt. She jumped up and saw the white rabbit was still in sight and was hurrying down a long corridor. Alice ran after the rabbit but was too late. She was standing in a low hall lit by lamps on the roof. There were doors all along the walls in the hall, but they were all locked. Alice did not know how to get out, but she found a key sitting on a three-legged table. She tried it in all the doors, but it didn't fit in any of them. Alice walked and checked the hall one more time, and unexpectedly found another very small door behind a curtain at the end of the hall. The key worked in it perfectly. Alice opened the door and found that it led into a small passage and into the most beautiful garden she has ever seen. The future tense summary. Alice will land and will be on the ground after her long fall, but will not be a bit hurt. She will jump up and will see that the white rabbit is still in sight and will hurry down a long corridor. Alice will run after the rabbit, but it will be too late. She will be standing in a low hall lit by lamps on the roof. There will be doors all along the walls in the hall, but they will all be locked. Alice will not know how to get out, but she will find a key sitting on a three-legged table. She will try it in all the doors, but it will not fit any of them. Alice will walk and check the hall one more time, and will unexpectedly find another very small door behind a curtain at the end of the hall. The key will work perfectly in it. Alice will open the door and find that it leads into a small passage and into the most beautiful garden she will ever see. And that's our story for today. I hope you enjoyed listening, and I hope you understood everything. If not, I would suggest listening to this again and again. Once you hear the same words over and over, you will begin to understand, and your English will be at a higher level. Also, the transcripts will be posted for this episode at www.oyejustino.com, and you can listen and read along at the same time. Were you able to follow the difference in tenses? I hope so. Listen next week, as we will continue this great story. I would love to hear where your comments are, and if you mention them to me, I'll talk about them in a new podcast. Just send me an email at english@oyejustino.com or visit our website to find transcripts, podcasts, and vocabulary flashcards. And again, see you next time. Bye-bye for now.